So the thing about Honest John the Fox is that he's played by Keegan-Michael Key.
Oh my god, it's
Oh, yeah, yeah. And a thing that you got to know about me is that I have a personal vendetta against Keegan-Michael Key and his collaborator Jordan Peele because of the skit they did, which was Substitute from the South Side or whatever.
Oh no, you're Aaron.
Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm a cricket. Nobody will get a song out.
This week, we go all in on Italian folklore with a Pinocchio battle royale. Before we fight fascism with the power of having a dead son, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla.
Aaron.
How do you feel about puppets?
I quite like puppets. I don't actually.
Really?
I have a traumatic memory involving a hand puppet, but otherwise, puppets I think are delightful fun.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of Defunctland lately, so I've been learning a lot about the history of Jim Henson and the Muppets and Sesame Street. So I think that, generally puppets are pretty good. They're one of, the oldest art forms in human culture. But I feel like they get a bad rap, They, there is something about, something moving on its own, simulating human motion that is unsettling to most people, and sometimes myself included. But I feel like I've definitely gotten over my puppet fear after just this incredible exposure therapy that we've had this weekend. Leyla, why did we decide to watch 3 Pinocchio films for this episode?
Because 3 came out last year, and we needed to do our grim duty and explore the concept of...
It was certainly grim.
In different ways each time, which is fascinating.
Yes. And we'll talk about that. What is your exposure to Pinocchio mythology generally, would you say?
So, I've seen the cartoon. I haven't seen it in a long fucking time.
Right.
And that's kind of it, really. Do you have any more, in-depth exposure to our boy Pinocchio?
I think the vast majority of my Pinocchio exposure came from Kingdom Hearts, right?
Oh, yeah, fair enough. You do have to fight in Monstro, a bunch of times.
Monstro, yes, in Chain of Memories, in 1, in some of the Dream Not Distance or whatever, but, yeah, Monstro, just, one of the most difficult levels in Kingdom Hearts, because it's just all flesh. It's so hard to navigate. Very funny, though. But yeah, besides that, I wouldn't say that Pinocchio is, even in, my top 10 Disney films, right? It's just, it's fine. But you know the legend, you know about the nose shit. That's about it.
I, fully forgot, until Cynthia Erivo opened her mouth, I fully forgot that When You Wish Upon a Star was a Pinocchio song.
Yeah, no, 100%, right? Because it's been the Disney, logo opening, song for forever. And, they make a nod to that in the Disney adaptation. Let's actually talk about the 3 we watched. So, famously, there was a Lionsgate Pinocchio, which I think actually came out in 2021. I think tail end of 2021. But it got famous on the internet because Pinocchio does the thing where he says, "Father, when am I going to be able to go out on my own?" And everybody was like, "Wow, he sounds very queer." And
yeah, Pauly Shore for some reason got cast as. So this was not Lionsgate did not make this movie. Lionsgate just imported it into the States. It's a Russian film.
Right. And here's the truth, folks. We did watch it. We're not going to talk about it because it was fucking dog shit. It wasn't fun.
Yeah, it was not a good... It was... Here's my problem. I watched it a while ago, and... the most I'll say about it is that it's not as bad as people say it is, but it's also not good enough to be memorable. I think you put it best in your notes. Like, this is something you put on for your kids while you're making dinner and you're not paying attention. Like, that's
Right.
it.
Right. No, this is like assault. Like if you're showing this to a kid, this is a complete like 3 out of 5-star film. It's bad, but like it's not so bad that you wouldn't show it to your children. I guess Pinocchio does get shot with a gun at one point, but that happens in Guillermo del Toro's adaptation too. It's just way funnier in this one.
Yeah, whatchamacallit? It's like an Alpha and Omega sequel. It's just something you put on.
It's very much in that vein. We'll maybe make reference to it, but we won't talk about it because it was just not memorable. The two big important ones are, of course, the Disney live-action remake with Tom Hanks and the Guillermo del Toro adaptation stop motion, which apparently was done with actual puppets. I'm learning from Leyla's notes, but that was also, the other one. So, it's more like a 2.5 Pinocchio battle royale, but you'll still get your mileage out of this one. We should probably talk about the Disney one first, right?
All right, well, take it away with Disney Pinocchio 2022.
Yeah, so we start out with Tom Hanks. He's the, clockmaker Geppetto. And basically he's been kind of depressed and agoraphobic ever since his family, his wife and his son died. That's one thing to note is that they forefront the family death in both of these movies to various degrees of efficiency in this one. But they are very much like, yeah, so, he's a widower and, his kid's dead. He lives with his fish and his kitten. The kitten might have been my favorite part of that entire movie. Figaro's very cute. Very distracting from the banality of the rest of this film. But like basically, he's sad, he's grieving. He lives in a house full of CGI cuckoo clocks that are all some sort of quaint Disney reference, which did make me gag a little bit. I was really disappointed that they made all of the cuckoo clocks Disney references. Like there's one which is like Rafiki holding up Simba. There's like the evil witch. Like I think it's a little bit like you can do that as an Easter egg, but this is like full on self-indulgence in a way that really bummed me out.
Yeah. Not to mention the puppet Pinocchio that Tom Hanks interacts with looks exactly like the cartoon to the detriment of the production, because they literally, it's almost like they took an eyedropper between the like 2D cell from the 40s and then put it on the real puppet, which does not mesh with the rest of the visual tone of the film. So it just looks uncanny, and they like didn't outline his eyes, so his eyes are really hard to see. Like it's just like as an introduction to the film, on top of the fact that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the cricket, and he's doing some like meta-narrative stuff that I wasn't super thrilled with. It was just not a very powerful entrance to this flick.
I thought it was fine. He comes in and sings the When You Wish Upon a Star. He's like floating down. I mean, he has some interesting, he's very folksy. He's like very animated. There's a line where the Blue Fairy is like, you should be his conscience. And he's like, oh, I'm a cricket. I'm not a conscience. I'm more of an insect than an instinct, which I think is a completely fine, smooth line. He has a couple of those, which I appreciated. But yeah, I think, I mean, to talk about the fact that Pinocchio is exactly visually identical to the one in the 40s, they couldn't have done it any other way, right?
I think they could have.
But it's Disney, is what I'm saying.
Lion King was completely realistic. Simba didn't look like Simba.
I suppose so, but like...
I also don't think that Beast in Beauty and the Beast looked like himself. Cinderella's dress, they completely changed. They could have tried something, but they didn't.
I feel like Disney is not brave enough to do any of that stuff, but I guess that's a fair point. All the other live-action stuff did take some liberties, so point retracted. Geppetto wishes upon a star. The Blue Fairy is summoned, and she grants Geppetto's wish and brings the puppet that he's recently made to replace his dead son, Pinocchio, to life. He is named Pinocchio on account of him being made of pine wood. And this just comes from the 1883 children's novel. The Italian Pinocchio can either refer to a pine nut or the pine tree. But Pinot means pine and Occhio means eye.
So this blue fairy, Cynthia Erivo, who's going to be Elphaba in the upcoming Wicked movie. I forget when the first one comes out.
Next year, I believe.
Nice. So we have Cynthia Erivo. We have a blue fairy from GDT's Pinocchio, and then we have blue fairy from Lionsgate Pinnochio. Which was your favorite?
Easily Guillermo del Toro's biblically accurate blue fairy. That was very cool. You know,
we'll get into her.
I think Oshia does a great singing job. You know, no shade to her, but she can't compete with a cool CGI fucked up angel.
No, and I do want to just give flowers and respect to Lionsgate Blue Fairy, a queen who cannot decide on an accent, and it's maybe one of the unintentionally funniest parts of that movie.
Yeah. So basically, we've got Pinocchio alive. The fairy says to Pinocchio that if he proves himself to be brave, unselfish, and true, he can become a real boy. And Jiminy is made his conscience to help tell right from wrong because he was literally born today. You know, pretty classic setup. This is core Pinocchio.
Yes. And you know what? At this point in the film, I was like, good luck to you, my boy Pinocchio.
Right.
Let's see where you take us.
You know, I want to point out one significant deviation that the Lionsgate film takes, which is at least new and interesting, is that they give Pinocchio, instead of a cricket, they give him a horse named Tybalt, who acts as his conscience, but also maybe his dad and talent agent.
Really anti-agent stances in two of the three of these flicks.
There's some weird stuff. Yeah, anyway. But, like, Geppetto, you know, once he realizes that his puppet's alive, he's very psyched about that, but he's like, you gotta go to school to learn things. That's what boys do. And, you know, at first, you know, Pinocchio goes to school, and he's like, I'm gonna go to school, and I'm gonna be a good boy, but he's immediately kicked out of school because they're like, you're a puppet, you can't go to school, obviously. Which, you know, this is the problem with Pinocchio in this adaptation, is that he's not really a character, right? You brought this up in your notes, but he doesn't make any choices.
He does not make any choices. He gets kicked out of school for being a puppet, which is, like, pardon the turn of phrase, very on the nose for this movie. And then he gets, you know, picked up by the circus, which is this fox and the cat. And this is where I started to notice something in this movie being very strange. There's a particular shot I picked out that for some reason the fox is wearing this, like, brocade blue velvet cloak, which is too blue for the shot it's in, and these pristine white gloves that are too white for the rest of his costume, in the sense that I, like, reduced the shot to black and white to do a value check, and the gloves become the focal point of the shot. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The people working at Disney are massively talented, incredible, dedicated artists. Something went wrong with this movie directionally, and it looks bad.
I don't have anything to contribute to that, but, like, I have seen Layla's like screen caps, and I can kind of agree, right? There's a lot of, you know, the white gloves kind of throw everything in the shot off, right? Because you are drawn to them. And then like with this value check, right? The white gloves are, like, brilliant against the kind of dull colors of everything else, which is very strange.
There's a shot, like, that's in the shot at night, and there's no light whatsoever other than, like, the light of the coachman's eyes, and I, like, found a comparison shot from How to Train Your Dragon where you can actually see what's going on. There's also a shot where Pinocchio is, like, 2 feet away from a bright yellow light, but the bright yellow light isn't casting on him or on the curtain directly behind him. So it's just, like, something happened here. It feels rushed. It feels perfunctory, and I feel awful because you think about these artists who have trained for years and years and years and had to go through like gauntlets to get hired at the Disney company. And then like, this is the product. It bums me out, genuinely.
Yeah, I think perfunctory is the right word. None of this feels like a labor of love, unfortunately. At least from the performers, they're doing it because they have the opportunity to get paid by Disney and be in a Disney film. And
Tom Hanks, I feel like, put his Tom Hussey in this. He really acted. But I mean, they didn't even market this. I think we saw like one trailer.
Right. And I mean, I don't know. That part of that is just the difficulty of marketing in the digital age, right? Where everybody's on social media, and a lot of young people don't like watch any other kind of media. But I have sympathy for anybody trying to do marketing. But it is very strange that something with like such a stacked cast did not have a bigger push.
Right. I feel like I heard more about Cocaine Bear than this movie. But then again, not everyone can have a wildly popular media analysis podcast in which there is a recurring segment that is just all marketing. Nobody's quite as lucky as us.
Yeah. Shout outs. If you are having difficulty marketing your multimedia movie, perhaps consider sponsoring the Mortified Marketing Minute. You can get at us at mortifiedpod@gmail.com. Anyway, so the thing about Honest John the Fox is that he's played by Keegan-Michael Key.
Oh my God, it's he.
Oh, yeah. And a thing that you got to know about me is that I have a personal vendetta against Keegan-Michael Key and his collaborator Jordan Peele because of the skit they did, which was Substitute from the South Side or whatever.
You're Aaron.
Yeah. Like, people still call me Aaron, and I get, like they're doing it like as a joke, but I've stopped taking it as a joke just to like make them uncomfortable because it irritates the fuck out of me because it's been happening for 10 years. Like when we bought Sierra's car, the car dealership man asked me if he could call me Aaron, and I said no. Because this, like so yeah.
That's like the harshest answer I've ever heard you give to anything.
Right. I'm usually a very chill person, but I don't do that shit. It annoys me so much.
Oh
it doesn't
my God,
actually never mind. I can't get into it. Anyway, if Key and Peele see me, it's on site. That's all I'm saying.
I can't believe you know what it feels like, because my problem is every man over 40 for 10 years would see me and go, Eric Clapton song, Leyla. And then one of them, the motherfucker, I got so mad about this that I went and learned the fucking Eric Clapton song because I wanted to be prepared. I was tired of people looking at me and being like, oh, you might not even know it. It was Eric Clapton. Man was like, oh, do you know the Eric Clapton song, Leyla? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, didn't believe me. And he was like, I'll give you $20 or he's like, sing it then. And I said, if you give me $20, and he didn't, the coward, and I would have. So finally somebody knows my pain. Yeah, no, I'm glad that media has made most of our names miserable anyway. But like all of this is to say, I'm mostly joking. Key's performance is fine. But this bit has some jokes in it. Both this and the Lionsgate bit had some jokes specifically coming from like the Fox circus people talking about how Pinocchio, they have to name Pinocchio something weird. The Lionsgate one was like, oh, well, I can't name you Leonardo because you'll either be a selfish actor, a nod to Leonardo DiCaprio, I assume, an artist, Leonardo da Vinci, or a turtle. Which, and this one, they're talking about how they need to have a stage name for Pinocchio, and he throws out the name Chris Pine. And at this point, I had to sit down and I was like, so, I don't believe this story believes in its own world. No, not for a second.
This is the edit point where we talk about Forspoken. Forspoken has come up recently on video game Twitter because people were making fun of its dialogue. There's a lot of meta humor about the protagonist who, she's an isekai protagonist. She finds herself in a fantasy world. She's tied to a bracelet that talks with big nouns and is all very, hammy and corny, the way that, you talk in a fantasy world that you're doing this thing. And she comments on it and she's like, oh man, if you keep talking like that, I'm going to kill myself because this is so fucking bullshit. I hate this. And like, the Forspoken dialogue doesn't really bother me. I think it's fine. I think it's mostly funny. But one of my favorite writers, Austin Walker, put out a blog about why he doesn't like that kind of humor. And I think it brings up a good point, which is like, if you are going to do a fantasy story where you have your protagonist or your, any of your characters undercutting the premise of your story, undercutting the fantasy, the tropes, the big picture, touchstones that are part of that narrative, right? And you can attribute this to Joss Whedon, right? Is the quippiness of Marvel movies as one of the major touchstones. But like, I think Walker brings up a good point, which is like, if your own characters don't believe in the reality of your world, and to the point where they are making fun and poking out of it, like it kind of breaks your experience as somebody who is trying to, engage with that media, right? If you don't actually believe in the world that you're living in, right, then it kind of falls apart. And I think Pinocchio absolutely suffers from this because it is more interested in telling these meta jokes than engaging with the actual story. And I think that's, I think that makes it weaker overall.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point because like, we talk a lot about buying in, and so I don't know if you caught it, but there's a game got kind of Beyonce dropped on us, like no one knew it was coming, but it was Hi-Fi Rush.
I just saw this, yeah.
The trailer has like really quippy dialogue, like it's very punchy and kind of like irreverent, but the world seems like it really buys into the whole bit, like it's consistently like that and stylish and goofy, which versus seeing that in like a Guardians of the Galaxy trailer or something, it really like didn't bother me. I thought it was a lot of fun. And then on the opposite end of that, I think it's interesting that like Forspoken of all things is getting this criticism because like Square Enix, which that's a Square Enix property,
yes,
right?
Yep, it is.
Squeenix, Final Fantasy, like
yeah, like the biggest name in cheese. Like Kingdom Hearts is all this. It's all Heartless and Keyblades and Xehanort. Like, and nobody jokes about that. Everybody takes that 100% seriously, and that's why Kingdom Hearts works in a large part because everybody's bought in.
I think more earnest I'm so tired of like this irreverent, cynical, self-referential meta nonsense. Like, just please, I'm begging for earnestness. Like, buy into your own bit. Be cringe. It's fine.
Right. Come on. We're all telling fantasy stories made up of, dragons and knights and bullshit. Like, it's completely fine. We love playing pretend.
This is why the antagonist of my webcomic is a 15-year-old, because I'm gonna let her be so cringe.
Anyway, following that digression, Pinocchio goes to Stromboli's circus. This is where we get a new character, Fabiana, who is a puppeteer, but also an ex-ballerina. She injured her foot doing some sort of dance thing. It's bad. They don't make good use of this character. And like, it's just disappointing because I feel like she's just kind of in there because otherwise there'd be like one woman.
I am just glad that they didn't. It felt like there was going to be a romance beat. I'm so glad they did not follow that.
Yes. And like, I know we just talked about how it's important to not be cringe or to embrace cringe, but like something about the puppet romance that she was trying to initiate. I think it might have just been the fact that she was using puppets to try to do her weird romance beat with Pinocchio. That sent me into orbit, but I was like, this makes me really uncomfortable and I don't like it. But yeah, Pinocchio does not need a love interest for any reason.
No, that would be insane.
Right. Anyway, it's bad. It's nothing. The person who plays Fabiana does a good job. She sings as well as she could. It's just wasn't
really cute girl.
She's great. Yeah, adorable. Wasn't given anything to work with. Anyway, Jiminy Cricket shows up. Pinocchio, in the one sequence in this film where he tells lies, grows his nose to find a key to help himself escape from a cage he's been locked in. Doesn't really come up again.
So it does. It is just that one time that I'm not nuts.
I don't think it happened any other time.
Oh, Jesus Christmas.
Maybe sometime in Monstro, but I think that's Guillermo del Toro.
Also, what did you think of my visual comparison that Jiminy Cricket in this film looks like Hopper from A Bug's Life?
I mean, they're cousins, right? I would say
Did
that they're
you see it a bit?
I mean,
the mask.
I don't want to. Oh yeah, they do have like this hood thing over their eyes, which maybe that's just what grasshoppers and crickets look like. I haven't actually, taken a whole detailed look, but yeah, he's probably yeah. This is Hopper's yuppie son, is what I'm seeing.
Maybe I'm just a Bug's Life pilled because it was one of those movies that I watched like 100 times when I was a kid, and I played the like PS1 spin-off. But the moment I saw that little ridge on his face, I was like, ooh, off-putting.
It was weird. It's weird. I'm not sure why he has that ridge. Anyway, wow. Okay. This is the part where they go to Pleasure Island. Basically, they escape, and then he's immediately picked up by the coachman, who has been on this podcast before. I believe it's Luke Evans or Luke Owens. Well, he plays Owen Shaw in The Fast Six, which is hysterical.
That was Owen Shaw?
Yeah, the brother of Deckard Shaw.
Oh my god.
So the coachman is just here, which is really funny.
Wow. Was that him that popped up like a whack-a-mole with the popcorn while Pinocchio was riding the ride?
I think so, right?
Okay, because he's got the best singing voice in that whole flick.
Listen, at least someone's having fun.
Yeah.
This Pleasure Island sequence is batshit. It's fun. It was one of my more enjoyable parts of this movie because I saw some criticism of this, which is that like they don't use actual beer in Pleasure Island. They use root beer, and that kind of undercuts the whole point of Pleasure Island because it's the alcohol that turns you into a jackass, which, fair, sure. I think that's a completely valid criticism. But I was completely swept away by the reincarnation of Pleasure Island as just like this like rage room, like Westworld style thing where it's just like, here's a school, you can like throw pianos out of windows, and here's a pile of free bricks you can throw at a church. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah, at that point, I was not watching this film. I was looking for like shot-by-shot comparisons of night scenes because I was going insane.
Right. It was, it's still fun. I had a fun time at Pleasure Island. There's spectral creatures on Pleasure Island for some reason.
Oh yeah, the fucking dust fucking creatures.
Yeah, he has like some like shadow ghouls that are at the coachman's command that help load up the kids, because the thing about Pleasure Island, if for some reason you don't know, the kids get turned into donkeys after they misbehave enough. They turn into jackasses, literally, and then he sells them to the salt mines, which is really good. I think that's great. That's a tabletop villain for sure.
I will say that one kid you watch turn into a donkey, that is terrifying.
Yes, there's one kid, I think he is Lampwick in this one. But like he like takes Pinocchio under his wing. He's like, "Come on, slats, why don't you play some billiards with me and drink some root beer, and we're gonna go on a carnival ride." But he, slowly transforms into a donkey, and he like, once he realizes it's happening, it's kind of gut wrenching because he like begins to sob and like bray, and it's like really grotesque. Like they don't lean as much into the scariness of the Pinocchio story as they could in this one, but here they do kind of hit the scary transformation, which is good.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable to watch.
Anyway, Pinocchio and Jiminy escape for some reason. I don't know how they get out. Doesn't matter. What matters is that they end up getting swallowed by Monstro, who looks like Sin from Final Fantasy, kind of, which is really cool.
Yeah, I like the fucked up whales in these movies. They're good.
Listen, I'm always here for a fucked up sea creature, so very happy about this Monstro incarnation. At this point, this is where he's reunited with Geppetto, who went out to sea to find him. They build a fire in Monstro's mouth. It causes him to sneeze. They're sneezed out. Pinocchio believes Geppetto has drowned, but then he cries and it wakes him back up. And then, he's not. Jiminy says something about how at the end, like, it doesn't matter whether if Pinocchio is real or not. They don't clarify whether or not he becomes a real boy, although while they're walking away in the final shot, it looks like his body becomes human instead of puppet. But I don't know why they added that. I don't think it really does anything for the story, but that's how that ends.
Yep, it's a movie that was a visual mess. It didn't know what tone it wanted to strike. It was a perfunctory copyright motion that didn't make the most of either its artists, or its actors, or its writers. It was less than the sum of its parts, regrettably.
However,
fine.
We did watch a good Pinocchio.
Guillermo del Toro did it again, lads. So, partnered with all of my stop motion girlies came together for this one. Shadow Machine, LAIKA, every single puppet girly was involved. And I love this. Also, shout out to my mentor from college, Parker, who was an animator on this film. I found him in the credits. Very exciting. I feel like I know a celebrity. But anyway, this one opens kind of similarly. Actually, it takes kind of the up route. Geppetto has this sweet little son named Carlo. They live in a small Italian village in Mussolini's Italy. He works as a master woodworker. He's working on carving this crucifix for the local church. Him and Carlo have a grand old time. Carlo's like a very good boy, and Carlo is on a mission to find the perfect pine cone to grow his own pine tree so he can make his own toys like his papa. And Geppetto tells him the story of, Carlo, you must be a good boy, and if you lie, your nose will grow very, very big, because everyone around you will be able to see the lie except for the person, who tells it. And then, they're going about their beautiful little life, and one day when they're working on the crucifix, one of the darkest fucking turns in a children's movie happens, where it's not even that the village gets bombed, it's that the planes flying overhead release the bombs to make their ballasts lighter.
It's really good. It's a really good, just tiny plot point that just kind of underscores the themes of the anti-war themes of this. But it's just like, it's great. Just like a freak accident born of not even negligence, but just like people wanting to be slightly more efficient with their war making. And it just a great touch.
Yeah. Ooh, grim. So, Geppetto, grieving his son, dives headfirst into alcoholism, but he does plant the perfect pine cone behind his grave, wherein, over the years, the pine tree grows. One night, our friend Sebastian Cricket, played by my man Ewan McGregor, arrives to write his memoirs and sleep in the pine tree. He found a perfect home, but he's disturbed when Geppetto starts cutting down the tree to carve a puppet of Carlo and bring his boy back. And he kind of half finishes this endeavor and goes to sleep, which is when we start to see the wood spirits and our girl, our best friend, biblically accurate blue fairy.
It's really cool. Like, so all the wood spirits are eyeballs, and they kind of converge together in the workshop, and they create this, like, exactly what you're thinking, like, multi-eyed, glowing specter. She's really cool. And so these are all puppets? These are all actual props?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible that this is an actual real thing that they made, because it looks fantastic.
They have to make... Okay, God, it's been so long since I watched, like, a LAIKA documentary, but if I remember correctly what they do... First of all, you have to make multiple bodies. You can't just make one body because they will wear and tear. Mm-hmm. Also, you want to be able to shoot multiple sequences with, especially, like, Pinocchio. You want to be able to shoot multiple sequences at the same time. So, you're making multiple bodies that have to look as close to identical as possible, which gets harder when you're, like, working with textures like feathers, Mm-hmm. It's a very exacting science, and they're all on these, like, very not high tech, but, like, very thoroughly engineered armatures. And then for the faces, they print thousands of faces that have the proper expression and the lip sync, which is just a marvel of planning. Because if I remember correctly, it's not like a whole face. They'll have different like eyes, like a different top slat for the eyes, and then a lip sync. And then like digitally they'll remove the seam. I think it might differ for different puppets though. I think there's a documentary on the making of Kubo and the Two Strings, which is where they first really started incorporating CGI with the puppets, which is to say the puppets themselves are puppets and they're shot live. But the like world around them can get CGI'd. So like Kubo has a lot of water and stuff. A lot of the effects will get CGI'd. It's a really like thorough technique. It's insane. Like mastery of craft. The Blue Fairy, sick as hell. I really also like that. She goes to Sebastian. She's like, "You're gonna help this little boy be a real boy," and he's like, "No, I'm a writer. No, I want to vibe. This isn't my job. I'm not a caretaker."
He's busy working on his memoir, which is titled "The Stridulations of My Youth," which is an all-time title.
Oh, that'll be the title of my memoir. But she's like, "Well, if you help him, you can have a wish." And he's like, "A wish? You mean I can get published?"
Yes, and I was like, "Yeah, I feel that, bud."
Yeah. Oh man. Sebastian agrees to be the conscience. Blue Fairy says, "Okay, live Pinocchio." And then Pinocchio wakes up in the morning and is a little freak.
Yeah, he's like crawling around on all fours, just like skittering around the attic, and Geppetto is rightfully terrified. He like gets a hatchet and tries to kill him. It's really funny.
He's grudging.
There is like, we talked a little bit about how Pinocchio is like an inherently like horrific story, but there is something like very interesting about how Geppetto gets drunk and tries to, like Faust before him, resurrect his dead loved one. And then he also like Frankenstein, right? This is like, the creator tries to create something, bring something to life that shouldn't be alive. And I think it's a really interesting take on that, where like, is this still fundamentally like kind of a good, kids? I don't know if this is a kid necessarily aimed at kids, but like this is fundamentally still a fairy tale.
Show it to children. Children love horror. Fucking scare them.
I mean, I bet kids would like this. I don't want to pigeonhole this as like only for kids.
Oh, no. But it should be accessible to kids.
But like, I do like that they are very like, this is the only one of all the three that we watched where Geppetto will freak the fuck out when Pinocchio was alive, which he should absolutely 100%. Like if one of my miniatures came alive, I would try to kill it with a hammer.
Yeah, absolutely 100%, no doubt about it. He tells Pinocchio to stay put as he goes to church, and Pinocchio, thrilled at the concept of church, does not stay and behave. He goes, church. And
he's just a little fucking freak. I love him.
He is so, and like, he is rightfully stupid, right? Like, he's like, "What's this?" And Geppetto's like, "A hammer." It's so
I
dumb.
love hammer. He's funny.
And so he goes to church, where he sees Jesus, and he poses like Jesus. And everyone sees that there's this little wooden boy, and rightfully all these Catholics freak out. A bunch of people are screaming like, "El Diablo!" Mm-hmm. It's a fun time. And so the Podesta, the fascist police in town, he's like, "Hey, Geppetto, your little freak wooden boy needs to go to school." And Geppetto's like, "Deal. No problemo. He'll go to school." He does not.
No.
He does not go to school. He gets stopped by, he gets stopped again by the circus freaks. Not freaks, derogatory freaks, weirdos.
This is Spazzatura, right? This is the monkey.
Yeah, Spazzatura and Il Volpe. So the monkey and the wolf. Spazzatura, played by Cate Blanchett, just making monkey noises.
Not a single line of dialogue, but a lot of monkey noises.
A lot of monkey noises.
Poor Cate Blanchett.
Hey, she volunteered. She wanted it. And Il Volpe convinces Pinocchio that he should come for hot chocolate and be a star, and he makes him sign a contract, which he signs with a little smiling sunshine.
It's very cute.
He takes him to the circus, where he becomes the living puppet.
at this point, Geppetto catches up with him, and he's like, "Hey, you can't. You gotta give my kid back." And this is where he dies the first time.
Yeah, so he dies. Interesting that you say the first time. He how does he die this first time? He straight up gets run over by a car, I think.
Right, they're pulling him. Oh, the fox and Geppetto are pulling him, and he gets flung into the road and hit by a car.
Hit by the Podesta's car, and the Podesta, instead of apologizing to Geppetto for running over his boy, is like, "This is why you shouldn't let your children loose." And so Pinocchio dies, and he goes to the afterlife, which is full of rabbits playing poker. And he meets the sister of biblically accurate Blue Fairy, which is biblically accurate, I guess, Death Fairy. And she informs Pinocchio that he is a little bit immortal. But there's a catch. He has to hang out with her. Every time he dies, he has to hang out with her a little bit longer until the sand in all her hourglasses runs out, and he'll just do that until the end of time.
Death also looks cool.
Death, yeah, she's like a cool sphinx.
Yep, kicks ass.
I think I would be cool doing that for like a couple of loops.
Yeah, here's the thing. I have not died yet, so I feel like I could probably do a couple times, but as we'll talk about at the end of this movie, I don't know. Is it a burden? Is immortality a burden? Is a question that this film asks. I do also want to hit one thing, which is that Pinocchio realizes that he's been made as a replacement for Carlo at one point. He's talking to Sebastian and kind of talks about how Carlo's death is a burden that only Geppetto can bear. And, Pinocchio is like, "Oh, that's really sad." And then, he furthermore talks to Geppetto about this. And he's like, "Why does everybody like Jesus instead of me, even though I'm made of wood?" And like, we kind of get Pinocchio's like muddled understanding of the world and like how like his place in it, and that comes to be important, right? Not only the Christ imagery and the reincarnation stuff, but specifically about being a burden, because that's what eventually drives him away.
Right. Very bold of this movie, I think, to use Christian imagery so heavy-handedly. Like, I haven't seen this since in like a mainstream big budget movie since The Prince of Egypt, which is kind of nuts. So, Death gives him this explanation, says, "God damn it, my sister meddling with the fucking rules again." Sigh. And then the sand runs out, and Pinocchio returns to the living world, where Geppetto is reasonably pretty fucking pissed at him, because Pinocchio signed a contract that says if he doesn't perform for Il Volpe, Geppetto owes him 10 million lira, which is quite a bit of money. And on the other hand, Podesta's like, "This boy won't die," which means he is the perfect soldier. And Geppetto does not want Pinocchio to go to war for Carlo-related reasons. The two of them go home, and Geppetto, again, rightfully upset with Pinocchio, says something along the lines of, "I made you to be like Carlo. Why are you not more like Carlo?" And Pinocchio says one of there's a lot of really heartbreaking lines in this film, but one of the harder hitting ones is Pinocchio saying, "I don't want to be like Carlo because Carlo's," and the implication is, "dead." And Geppetto calls him a burden.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
This leaves Sebastian to, previously Sebastian explained like what a burden is, but this also leaves him to explain that sometimes fathers say things that they think they mean in the moment, but they don't, and they just need time to like come to that, which is an interesting thing to say when we talk about the Podesta in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting turn there. So Mr. Pinnoch, our boy, our son, feels so guilty over this whole thing, and he loves his papa so much, he goes and willingly joins Il Volpe's circus, where Il Volpe says, 50-50 profits, baby. Not the case.
No.
He makes Pinnoch perform, and sure, it's 50-50, but not before the travel fees, expenses, feeding, lodging, leaving Pinocchio with just a few coins that do never make it to Geppetto.
Right. And specifically, he's doing routines that are like fascist propaganda, right? They're like, it's not USA shows, but like, there's a thing that in America, there's a thing that if you watch war movies, there's like often times like USO shows maybe is what I'm thinking of, but like they're doing things to entertain troops and other people and promote the spread of fascism, basically.
Right, and like it gets increasingly fascistic to the point where Il Volpe wants Pinocchio to perform a very special show for Mussolini himself,
which is really interesting.
Bonkers. Geppetto and Sebastian go looking for Pinocchio, but on their way chasing him gets swallowed by the dogfish, which is the monstro of this world. Again, fucked up looking creature. Love him. He's just
he's great.
Just a wrinkly, just fucked up looking whale. Eventually, Spazzatura, in an effort, because Spazzatura is jealous of Pinocchio, tells Pinocchio that, hey, you should fuck off because Il Volpe's lying to you. He's been taking all your money. Which Il Volpe does over here. Mm-hmm. Spazzatura tells him he's not sending anything back to Geppetto, at which point Il Volpe beats the shit out of this monkey.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It is hard to watch. And Pinocchio gets in the middle and stops it, and says, I will not have my co-star treated this way. At which point Il Volpe starts to show his true colors, as maybe not a good guy.
Yeah, he does cut Pinocchio's nose off. A little bit.
Yeah. A little bit. But it's okay, because Pinocchio gets him back when he calls Mussolini in front of his face a poopy pants.
Yeah, it's the whole Mussolini is in this movie for like maybe 2 minutes. His first line is, I like puppets. And I think his last line is like, I do not like this puppet, when Pinocchio is just like, saying like, I'm Il Duce, I like to shit in my pants, basically. And then he does ask to execute Pinocchio. He's like, kill the puppet, shoot him. Mussolini and his assistants, and also, by the way, the captain that takes Geppetto across the like river, all played by Tom Kenny of SpongeBob. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Great. Voice acting is an incredible profession.
So the last line you hear Tom Kenny say in this film, I believe, is Arrivederci, as he launches himself off the side of the boat as the captain. So Pinocchio's executed, which means he's back with death. And at this point, he starts to learn a little bit more about mortality, because, death is like, he's like, it's chill, it's whatever, I'll come back. And Death is like, yeah, you'll keep coming back, but you might, like, miss the lives of your loved ones because you'll be here with me. And that's the beauty of human life, is it's, like, transient and it doesn't last. So when he returns from death the second time, Pinocchio is found by the Podesta. Again, this fascist police, who takes him to a camp for boys to become special fascist soldiers, where he befriends, Pinocchio befriends his son Candlewick, who had first burned his feet off because he's a little shit. But, they're pitted against each other in a training exercise, and the boys who kind of, like, made friends the night before, decide that they can tie. And they do, and they both come to the Podesta, and they say, we both won, which, you know what? I kind of get, in a war game, maybe you don't want that, but also I would be thrilled that I have two very fast boys if I was the Podesta. But he's not thrilled with that, and he tells Candlewick to shoot Pinocchio with, like, a gun.
He pulls out a pistol. He's like, kill your friend. And Candlewick's like, what?
Yeah. So Candlewick finally grows a spine. He says, hey, you suck, but I can tell you no. At which point the Podesta throws the boy. And him and Pinocchio work together to, get him to maybe not shoot the puppet. And then a bomb falls on him, which I say is poetic justice.
Got his ass.
Did Candlewick survive?
I think so. I think it's implied.
Okay. Good boy. Good Candlewick.
I don't know. Do we see him ever again?
Not after Il Volpe shows up again and crucifies Pinocchio and tries to set him on fire.
He does very much crucify Pinocchio.
At which point Spazzatura the monkey comes to his senses and flings Il Volpe off a cliff, and he smashes his spine on screen.
It's pretty good.
GDT does not pull a single punch.
Listen, this man is the monstrous dude, and he does not listen. Like, have you seen Pan's Labyrinth?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's a tough film to watch for many reasons, but it is also very gory.
Good film. It's very, very hard to watch. Not every movie by Guillermo del Toro cancels the apocalypse, regrettably.
Yes, unfortunately.
Quick aside, I don't know if you saw my post about this, but I regrettably am back on dating apps, and I did come across a profile that was like, oh, I'm into all sorts of nerd stuff. If you know what Gypsy Danger is, good for you. Or like Bravo or something. And I was like, Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim made $411 million in the box office.
Yeah, like Pacific Rim got a sequel. Like it's not a niche film, my guy.
Yeah, sure ain't. So anyway, Pinocchio and Spazzatura and yes, just the two of them at this point escape. They also get swallowed by the dogfish, and then they find Geppetto and they find Sebastian, and they all celebrate because they're all back together again. It's great. They figure out that they can actually escape from the belly of the dogfish by Pinocchio lying a bunch of times and getting them all out of the blowhole, which is a very tense sequence. Very cool. And they get out, but oh no, Pinocchio gets kind of re-swallowed, and Geppetto and Sebastian almost get re-swallowed again. And Pinocchio dies once again, trying to save his family, except while he's dying, Geppetto is drowning. So Pinocchio is faced with a choice: break the rules again, and become mortal, and maybe save Geppetto, or you get to keep your immortality. And our good boy gives up his immortality and goes to save Geppetto, and dies for real, for final, in the process. At this point, I was crying.
Yeah, like, this was the only time in any of these Pinocchio films that I was moved to emotion, and I was like, oh, this is like, wow, this is doing it.
It's a lot. But, the blue fairy comes and she basically says, hey, Geppetto, I was just trying to make you happy. And Sebastian, in all his righteous literary fury, says, you promised me a wish. And she's like, well, did you do the thing? And he's like, well, I did my best, which is kind of all I committed to. And she's like, well, then you get your wish. And instead of a publishing deal, he does bring Pinocchio back to life.
Kind of nice.
It's kind of nice. And then you just watch everybody grow old and die.
Yeah, the ending of this film is wild. It's exactly what I would expect from GDT, but like it is truly just like, hey, immortality is also difficult to deal with. Like, we went through all the trouble of saving everyone, but in the end they all go away. And like it's framed as like, that everybody is with each other, nobody dies alone, right? Pinocchio is there for all of them, for Spazzatura, for Sebastian, and for his father. But he is left alone in the end, which is, like, kind of grim.
Yeah. He seems contented, though. He didn't seem too sad.
Right. The last line is, he ventured into the world, and I believe the world embraced him back. So, like, it ends on a hopeful note, but it is still wild to end this film on, like, yeah, so all these characters died.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a movie about mortality, so I guess,
Right. I mean, it fits tonally, but, like, it is very few films about immortality go that far.
Yeah, well, GDT again, no punches pulled.
Right.
It's a lot. But I mean, so if we want to talk about our talking points here, which is like GDT's Pinocchio buys into its own fantasy.
Right.
It's very kind of highfalutin, but at the same time, like it it's a beautiful story about mortality that also has some, like, cartoon logic to it, especially when Sebastian keeps getting the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, I mean, in every single one of these, he is bludgeoned with books, he is trapped inside jars, he is, he goes through the fucking ringer.
Yeah, and, like, the opening sequence of Disney's Pinocchio doesn't really set the world up very well, but the opening sequence of GDT's does, because it's both this, like, sad story about grief, this, like, hopeful story about this puppet that comes to life, and it has all this, like, folk magic, but then Sebastian also gets his head smushed between the symbols of a cuckoo clock. And you're like, we're also going to get some Tom and Jerry shit here. Which I think is very, very good.
In the Disney one, there's a cuckoo clock of a woman with a large butt, and Jiminy Cricket is like, "Oh, excuse me, ma'am." He's like extremely horny, which is very fun. I just thought I should point that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any notes about just like the difference between we watched there's 4 different kinds of animations across the 4 Pinocchios we've been talking about. Or not animation, but movie making techniques. I mean, I don't know if you have any wisdom to share, but like, I mean, I think I'm always going to be pretty pro 2D animation, but watching the stop motion stuff was really truly incredible and just kind of just like an art style that we just don't see that often, which I was very impressed with.
Yeah, it's pretty much just LAIKA in the States that does it. And sorry. Also, another shout out to people from my alma mater. There's a small commercial studio in LA called Apartment D, which is a stop motion studio. Folks from my old college started. They're quite successful. They do a lot of like TV spots and stuff. So good for them. I'm always pro. Listen, it's all craftsmanship, and like it's not that digital work isn't craftsmanship. Like I'm a digital illustrator. That would be very hypocritical of me to like try to claim. But I do like love seeing. Like when the Death Fairy like moves the sand, you can kind of see the sand wiggle, like that human touch. I really like, man, I love 2D animation and I love stop motion so much. And like, I wish we had more of that, even though they're not like quote unquote efficient crafts, right?
Yeah. I mean, like this is, we've seen a lot of consolidation in media companies lately, and like, there's just been layoffs for the sake of showing how efficiently you can run your company. And like, this is the problem with not investing in your media companies and just making them, things to sell as shareholders, is that like shareholders don't want your beautiful, well thought out, like painstakingly produced puppet show. They want to make sure that you're, producing media and not spending too much on it, which means, using the skeleton crew that you need. And I just really wish that all people in all media did not have to fucking clench their asses every single time quarterly reports came out, because like if we could just, give media companies the time they need to produce works of art, we could get like 100 more of these and the world would be better for it. It's a damn shame.
Yeah, gorgeous film. Hey, what's Pinocchio about?
I was thinking about this. I think that's the thing. It depends, right? Like Geppetto only really got focused in this story in the Guillermo del Toro one, and I think that made it much stronger. If we want to talk about Pinocchio as a character, his whole thing is about learning to live in the world, I think, and just being like, the naivety of being young and just being like, there are options that you have. You can go to school, perhaps. But it's much more fun to, have fun with your friends and try to make it famous, right? And the morality of the common sense that the stories want to tell you is that like you should, listen to your conscience, listen to the thing that's, your parents, the people who are ostensibly supposed to look out for you. But like I really do think that Pinocchio is more about just like, how fucking hard it is to be a person, even if you are a manufactured one. Like, if we want to take the central metaphor of, becoming a real boy to be like becoming a genuine, like decent person, and just be like, it is so hard to be a decent person in the world, like just because of circumstances that happen to you. Right. Any one of these, you could like all the people that Pinocchio interacts with, they're quote unquote bad people, but like that's kind of the point of the story, is like you can go off the straight and narrow at any point, and like maybe that is a bit of a fabulous reading, which is like the moral of the story is X, right? But I do think that ultimately this is a fairy tale in the style of like a morality play, like this is what you should do, and I think it works perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, like I find it interesting how the whole, like, because if you think of Pinocchio and you're like, okay, what's Pinocchio about? And it's like, it's a puppet whose nose gets longer when he lies. It's interesting how lying like plays a role in, I'm going to talk about the 1940s Pinocchio, because his nose actually grows more than once in that one.
Right.
Versus like GDT's, because so you can talk about 1940s Pinocchio as a morality play about lying, right? And like listening to the conscience, the little voice inside your head, even when it's the hard thing to do. But in GDT's Pinocchio, it's interesting because lying is almost always like like a function of cowardice. It's only employed in moments when Pinocchio is like scared or defensive, and doesn't really understand the consequences of his own actions quite yet. So in that sense, it's about like you said, like how hard being a person is and how hard it is to tell the truth. So in terms of like what is Pinocchio about, I was like, I don't fucking know, but it has a lot of interesting, I'll say potentially interesting tools you could use to tell these stories. And obviously, I think you and I are on the same page of like GDT's was the strongest.
Yeah. I mean, clearly of the ones where, you know, this was clearly a passion project, right? Del Toro had been working on this specific film for forever, and it was stuck in development hell, and only just now got a seat with Netflix. Whereas, like, you know, the Disney one is just a soulless cash grab, as all the live action ones are. Like,
and thank God, what a beautiful film! Like, I feel like the world is richer for having it.
Right. This is, you know, like I said about art before, just like absolute work of like actual genuine care and artistry, and like it's a gorgeous piece. It's hard to beat. So if we were gonna remake a weird, you know, in a weird unconventional art style, I my suggestion is stop motion, but you know, whatever one you think would be interesting and weird, what classic tale would we remake and try to bring to modern audiences with a fun new spin, a la GDT's Pinocchio?
I see you already have a suggestion.
So I don't actually know a lot about Baba Yaga. I know that she lives in a house with cool chicken legs, but that's about it. I would love for American and Western audiences generally to be exposed to the actual like an anthology of Baba Yaga stories, like maybe like 5, like, you know, maybe like not even 20 minutes, but maybe like 15 to 20 minute like stories about the Baba Yaga and just like kind of the general mythos and story about what the Baba Yaga is and what she does. And, you know, maybe we could get like a little bit of a Baba Yaga : origins, but like, you know, just like a fun claymation Baba Yaga, I think would be great.
Yeah, I would love that. I honestly, like, I feel like I know versions of her story, but not probably ones that are sanitized for kids, because I feel like that's how I consumed most of it. Listen, 1957 Russian animated film Snow Queen fucks just completely. So I think it might be fun to go for the Snow Queen again, because listen, I literally, as I'm saying this, I remember that that's what Frozen was supposed to be.
Oops.
But wasn't.
Let it go, Leyla. Let it go.
That's not what it was. So I do think maybe we could do like another Snow Queen. I think in stop motion would be kind of a delightful time. You could do a lot of very fun snow effects. And also 1957 Snow Queen, by the way, free, subtitled on YouTube. Very, very pretty film. It's like 60 minutes long. If that, I think. It's quite short. But, you know, I love a story about, like, young love. And those two kids, they'll really just, like, go like to any length for each other. It's what I find charming about Spirited Away. I've learned that now the part where Haku comes back after maybe being dead makes me cry. That's new. That's never happened before. Cry about that now. But yeah, I think maybe that one could be fun. And also because you get to play with like snow practicals.
Yeah.
And I just think that's fun.
That is fun. That's neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is
a neat one. I have an alternative suggestion. I think you and I should produce us specifically. I do think somebody should let us produce a King Midas stop motion short where everything he touches turns to gold. And then, hey, I'm going to edit this out, but I think then we take the gold and we run. So it's kind of like a grift.
Like a cash grab, you might say?
Literally, yeah.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Let's have
Okay.
a show.
Leyla, when we are not trying to give just a little bit more light and love to classic stories with our wonderful imaginations, where can we be found on the internet?
You can find me at LEYLSES on Twitter and Tumblr. Mostly on Tumblr, honestly. Just some kind of working. I'm working on my webcomic. Yeah, it's fun. What about you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL. You can go to my website, that's at aavoit.com, where I talk about tabletop RPGs, health policy, and writing. I've got another podcast that's at The Bible Boys. We just released an episode on Sister Act with Whoopi Goldberg, which was a delight. But that's a podcast where my ex-evangelical friends and I talk about Christian media. It's a good time. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, how should we end this week's episode?
Hey, I think I hear your cat meowing in the back again. I regret to inform you, but the abnormal boy lacks discipline.
We'll see you all next week.